Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Chris Naugle is America's #1 money mentor, a former pro snowboarder turned multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, and the founder of the Private Money Club. After nearly losing it all in the 2008 crash, Chris discovered the 200-year-old infinite banking concept used by the ultra-wealthy and rebuilt his empire without banks or financial advisors. He's the author of 2 best-selling books, host of the Chris Naugle Show, and has helped thousands achieve financial freedom using proven wealth-building strategies. Chris teaches everyday people to take control of their money, break free from bad financial advice, and build self-sustaining wealth. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Lance. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, had to have you on with a resume like that. Before we get into the details of the resume, though, tell us how you got here. Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? What drives your entrepreneurial spirit?
Not at all. Yeah, no entrepreneurs in my family. Mom ran a little, like, I guess, daycare. That's about as entrepreneurial as it gets. Mom ran a daycare when she was raising me. The rest of my family were all just factory workers. So I think where the real desire came from wasn't because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was because I wanted freedom of time. You know, when I was a young teenager, I wanted to be a pro snowboarder. And to be a pro snowboarder, what I found very quickly is when I got a job, because I started working at 14 on farms, but at 16 I was working in restaurants, and they required you to work weekends and nights, and you know what, that just got in the way of the snowboarding because I had to compete. So I had to make a decision of how was I going to make an income without having to give up my time, and that's how I landed in that. I quit that restaurant job, started a clothing line, printing shirts with my art teacher, and that was I was actually 15 at the time, almost turning 16, and I started selling those shirts out of my backpack. Then I got friends to sell shirts and hats out of their backpack, and that became my first company. 1992 would have been the year, and that's really how I became an entrepreneur. And from there, it just spun up. I mean, I turned that clothing line, I turned it into a retail shop in 2000. What year would I was going to say 2000, but that would have been 1997. So I was just turning 18 years old when I did that first store, and it was called Fat Man, P-H-A-T, Man Board Shops, which is still around today. I sold it in 2010 after the Great Recession, but it was an awesome business. Ran it. Almost went bankrupt a couple times because of the dot-com crash, which is how I landed in the Wall Street world. I need, again, kind of, you're seeing this thing. I wanted to be a pro snowboarder. That led to the freedom of time, led to me becoming an entrepreneur and getting the dream of opening my own shop because that was just conducive to what I wanted. Now, that was fun because I learned a lot during that. I learned about accounting and I learned about economics and wrote a business plan. My mom put our tiny little 700 square foot 2-bedroom house up for collateral so that her punk snowboard kid could chase this dream of opening the shop. So kudos to Mom for that. I think it was a stupid thing looking back that she did, but that's what got me where I'm at, right? And everything was perfect. Like I was literally living a fairy tale land from 94, straight up to the 2000s. I was a pro snowboarder. I was running my snowboard shops, expanding them and doing multiple shops. And then the recession, the dot-com crash, brought me to my knees, and I needed a job. For the first time from 16 years old, I needed a job. And I put a resume out, and the only people that got back to me was Wall Street. And that's how I ended up in Wall Street, becoming a financial advisor. And during that period, that was tough because I would put a suit on, go to the office in the morning, then drive to my shop, work the evening shift, which was usually like 4 to 9 or 5 to 9, strip the suit off in the office at the shop, and then put on a hoodie and a beanie to go sell snowboards and skateboards till 9 at night. And I did this for years and years and years and years. And then in winter, I would go snowboarding and travel and do all that. It was wild, man. But that's what got me where I'm at.
Yeah. When you went to Wall Street, was it very much like the Jordan Belfort education style that you got? I mean, you didn't have formal training or anything with that, right?
Zero formal training, but it was more like the boiler back then. That the Jordan Belfort didn't happen. It was pre Wolf of Wall Street. So we're talking Boiler Room would have been the movie that would have kind of justified that. The original Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Boiler Room, and it was just like that. I mean, I was in the bullpen, which is a bunch of cubicles in the middle. You're just dialing for the big advisors on the outside offices with the glass, thinking, hey, how do I get one of those glass offices, those corner offices? And you're always working up to that. And I found some inefficiencies when I worked there. They call us the new org. We were pretty much, as Jordan would say, pond scum. And that's how they treated us. But I was like, all right, how do I escalate this? How do I get where I want to be? And I found that all the people that came in and were working, they would get there right before the bell, right when they had to. Like if have to be there at 8:30, they got there at 8:30. And at lunch, everybody left for lunch and went down to the cafeteria or went out to eat. And then come 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, the place was a ghost town. Everybody was gone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to come in at 7 in the morning and I'm going to get all my paperwork and everything ready. I'm going to do what I got to do up until lunch. I didn't have money to go to lunch, so I pounded the phones during lunch, set appointments for the evenings, because when everybody left, I would go out and I would see clients at their kitchen tables. And that's how I did it. And I did this for years and years, and I became one of the top 3 advisors at that firm. And then I eventually left that firm to go to an independent boutique. It was like a boutique RIA, and then we had an investment banking division upstairs. So I did that, and that's where I finished up my advisory world. And I only left that world because we were doing real estate. My wife and I had started pursuing getting a TV show on HGTV. That was like our big dream, and that happened in 2018. But when that happened, when you get a national television show, you have to go to your compliance department. You have to tell them, hey, listen, great news. We're going to be on HGTV. We got our own show. And compliance looks back at you and says, okay, we can't approve that outside business activity. So you're going to have to decide, are you going to be a financial advisor or are you going to be this TV show star? So easy decision. I went over to this guy, Mike, who I worked with in the firm. And I said, hey, Mike, you want to buy my practice? And we struck a deal. I sold my financial advisory practice to him to pursue the TV show, which never worked. Like, it went out, we aired, and it just didn't go on. But that's what led me down the path of, the infinite banking concept, private money club, and all the things that I do today.
Yeah. Was HGTV just not, was it more or less a pilot and a test, and the numbers didn't pan out? Is that what
No,
happened
actually, quite the contrary. It was a pilot, but the pilot all got approved, and we went to series, and the numbers were there. We were number 2 coming out of Greenlight. There was only one show ahead of us, which is actually still on, Jasmine Roth, who we knew well. And what happened is listen, like, sometimes you just got to believe that God's always watching out for you, and everything happens at exactly the right time, whether you like it or not. So Discovery, if you remember, bought HGTV back around 2018, and that was what was going on. So when Discovery bought the network, HGTV, they froze all new shows. Jasmine's show had made it through a couple months prior. So when our show came up and we were up against Flip or Flop and that, we had the slot, we had the ratings, but they just decided they were going to just nix all new shows and just double down on Flip or Flop. And if you remember, that's when, Christina and Tarek were kind of going through their things, but yet they still had the show and they were still pushing it. Some of you real estate folks remember that, but that was what happened.
Huh. Interesting, man. You live. Where does creating the private money club and this 200-year-old infinite banking concept, where does that play into the timeline?
Yeah, so there's 2 different things. So infinite banking played into the TV show stuff. So we were borrowing a lot of money from borrowers, from private lenders. And this one guy, Mike, who had lent me a bunch of money, lived in Salt Lake. So I was out in Salt Lake filming for snowboarding, and I met with Mike at the Cheesecake Factory, and I just said, so Mike, how do you lend on all these deals? And he basically goes through all the stuff about infinite banking, and he starts, he says, I lend from my own private bank, to which I was an advisor at the time, but I didn't know what infinite banking was. I'm like, your own private bank? Holy crap, you're way wealthier than I thought.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I just changed where my money goes first. I don't own a bank, but I operate like a bank. He said, I put money into a different account that pays me guaranteed interest, dividends, tax-free. But where he really got me, because I was trying to figure out what this thing was as he's explaining it. And then he says, when you come to me with a deal like this, what I do is I take a loan from my bank and I give that money to you, to which you then pay me 15% interest, which I take and I put it back into my bank. And he kind of drew it like a circle. He said, but if it was, I'll just use 100 grand as an example. If I have 100 grand in my private bank and I take 100 grand out to give to you for this real estate deal, my 100 stays in the account earning interest and dividends uninterrupted while I make money a second time. So how he framed it up, and he did a terrible job of explaining infinite banking, but he said, I make money twice on the same dollar. And I'm like, oh my gosh, You need to teach me how to do this. To which he said, I can. I learned from this guy, Brent. I said, you need to give me Brent's number, which began the process of me then, meeting Brent Kessler, him being my mentor. And then I was just using it. I wasn't selling it. I was just using it in my life. And
Yeah.
I was having him come out and speak to my RIA because we had the show. So we'd pack every month 100+ people in our conference room, for this RIA, and Brent would come out and teach the infinite banking. And that's kind of what got me into it. I'm in the back of the room when Brent's doing the presentation, answering everybody's questions as they had questions, because I just knew it so well. And then one day my wife suggested it. She said, ask Brent if he needs help. He looks tired. So I did. And he said, yeah, I'd love to do that. Do you want to go out and speak at some events? And I started going out, and that's what got me into the infinite banking. The student became the teacher, I guess. And now, I am the largest and the biggest in the country for IBC and our company. And now there's a bunch of stuff going on where we're Brent is kind of stepping down and I'm stepping in. It's an interesting dynamic. Now, PMC, privatemoneyclub.com. Let me mention that. During COVID, I live in New York. I had 91 rentals, 91 doors. Okay. And in New York State, they effectively said tenants don't have to pay rent. You can't evict them.
Yeah.
So what do you think tenants did? Stop paying rent. Contrary to everything we tried doing to keep them paying rent, they stopped. So I had just had it. Real estate, and this is in 2020, 2021, I had just been through the grinder, right? 274 flips, lots of wholesale deals, just dealt with everything crap thing you could. So I sold all of our rentals, all except for, I think we still have 6. Okay. I sold every one of them, which meant I had a big chunk of cash come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I had all this money, I'm like, okay, now I want to be the bank. I don't want to be the borrower. I want to be the lender. So I thought this is going to be easy. You just go out and you find people that need to borrow money. And I found out that is not easy. Finding good borrowers is like finding a needle in a haystack. So I said, one day I was at a bar with Steven, who's now my director of operations. I said, there's got to be an easier way to do this. So on a piece of paper, I drew a circle and I said, Stephen, I'm pretty good at solving problems. There are 2 types of people in the world, people with money and people that need money. And I said, both have a problem. People with money want to make more. I know that because that's me. And then there's people that need money, and those people used to be me, and they need money to make money. So I said, each of them have the ability to solve one another's problems. And I said, and I just framed it up like this. I said, Stephen, do you know that back a day, many moons ago, when you wanted to meet a girl or a guy and you wanted to date, you had to go to the bar, you had to go all these places. It was a lot of work to find a date. Yeah. Now there's dating sites. They just put their profile up, they go on, they communicate and chat in this community, and voila, they date, maybe they love each other, they get married, they have kids, on and on. I said, that needs to exist for money. So I created Private Money Club as the first dating site for money. And that was 4 years ago. Today, there's over 10,000 members, hundreds of millions of deal flow. And it's simple. It's peer-to-peer lending. People with money meet people that need money in a dating site-like environment, but you're not dating, to date, you're dating for money. Each of you are solving each other's money problems, and that's Private Money Club. And then it's spawned off into a new registered investment advisory so we can expand our offerings in Private Money Club from a regulatory side into syndications, Reg Ds, and all sorts of fun stuff.
If people are, I'm salivating and listening to this, and I hope some of my audience is too. A lot of entrepreneurs out there, a lot of people that are just want the same thing that we all want if you're an entrepreneur like you and I, then it's freedom first. And then how do you get there through the facilitation of what we're doing, whether it's services, products, or money? What is the barrier to get in terms of what capital? Is it like, oh, got to be 6 figures? You need a credit score of 750 because you're doing this lending at the same time that you're banking the cash.
So let's just talk about privatemoneyclub.com. So the barrier is really, I would say to make it successful, 10 grand is kind of like that. You got to have
that little.
Oh yeah. And there's you can come in and there are lots of deals. Just the other day, there was a deal on there for 7 grand in a first lien position, paying 15%. It was raw land the guy has, and it's in a development, and he's gonna develop a house on that. So he needed the money to buy the land, and then he's gonna do a second raise, in a tranche with a bank to build the house. So you could literally lend at 10,000. I always tell people like 25 is probably a better metric to get started, because you can definitely get into deals at 25,000. And there's accredited and non-accredited deals on there now. So when you sign up, and it's totally free. So that's one of the things about regulation is when you start getting into like what I created in the tech, we realized the problem wasn't that this is a cool idea. The problem was the regulations are different for every single state. So the only way to get every state approval to be able to do Private Money Club is we needed to make the site totally free. So it's like any other social site. So you go on there, you're free, you create your profile. It'll ask you if you're accredited or non-accredited. You self-verify, which then opens up a window of whether or not you can see certain deals or not. And then you just go on, you talk to people in the community, you look at deals, you build relationships, you friend people. It's just like every social platform you've been on, except for you're on there not to communicate, laugh, look at funny dance pictures. You're on there to make money and solve somebody else's problem. And the infinite banking stuff is even simpler. So you're creating your own banking system to take back control of your money. And you can start with just your age and add a zero. I'm 48 years old. So add a zero. That's 480. That's my minimum monthly amount that would work for creating your own banking system. So whatever age any of your audience is, add a zero. That's the minimum monthly deposit you would have to make into the specially designed whole life to create your own banking system.
Amazing. Break down? There's some things that are probably that are definitely over my head here, and for some of the audience. But I think it's good that you're bringing up. Just to help us educate us. Credited versus not.
Yeah, so basically, accredited investors, you're going to have a certain standing in terms of income and net in assets. So it's usually over $1 million or $2 million in assets, or 200,000, and expect your income to be about the same. That's a super 30,000 foot view of what an accredited investor is. Non-accredited is just somebody that doesn't meet those classifications. And now I want to be clear, folks, because I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, no, that's not the only." There's lots of different ways you can prove that you're an accredited investor. I just gave you the two most common qualifications, which is $1 million or $2 million in assets or net worth, and $200,000 in income, and expected to be the same in the future.
Who helps you prove that you're accredited versus not?
Yes, that's a great question. So CPA, those rules are changing, which is really unique that we talk about that. It used to be like you needed a certified letter from a CPA. Now you can self-verify in a form, sign it. Sometimes you got to notarize it depending on the state, but effectively you self-verify. Or you could print out a personal financial statement, have your CPA write a letter, lots of different ways, but it's getting easier by the minute to prove you're an accredited investor.
Amazing. What is it? Let's just go back to money. One of the things my parents that drove me nuts when I was growing up is I grew up much like you, except your mom was an entrepreneur, I guess, like you said about with the daycare, but mine was definitely not. She's still in the same job. God bless her for having it though, because we needed the steady income. Dental assistant, now she's managing that office. 35 years or 40 or something, just some crazy. She's only working now just to get away from dad and out of the house. Dad is odd jobs, but never had his own business or anything. And then I'm this serial entrepreneur, all kinds of businesses, nonprofits, the whole thing. And one phrase that they said over and over again that just drove me insane was, having money isn't everything. And then my favorite rapper, Kanye West, completed that sentence for me about 10 years ago. Having money isn't everything, not having it is. And I go, man, that just hit me right in my soul. That for me, that dispelled a myth about money. Is I'm like, I get the cope that they were using. It's a way to cope with not having money, right? And they're like, oh, it's not everything. And it's like, man, it really is. If you're not, and if you want freedom. Your pursuit was professional snowboarding. Mine is I'm literally on it right now, like professional fisherman, trying to go down that road. But what is the myths that you found to be false about money?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I found to be false is that money, like what you said and your parents said, money is everything, right? Money is nothing more than a tool.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to use the tool, that's when money becomes everything, because then you realize that money is a catapult to solve other people's problems, a catapult to do God's work and go out and give. And, we have a private foundation. We give tons and tons of money, and that is honestly one of my favorite things to do. So the biggest myth about money is that you need to take and understand what money truly is. It is just a tool that at first solves your problem. But I think one of the big myths is if you want more money, solve somebody else's problem. You'll never make more money solving your problem. The
Yeah.
number one way to make money is go out and find a way to solve other people's problems. Everything I do, all 19 of my companies do one thing and one thing exceptionally well, and that is solve somebody else's problem. And because we solve somebody else's problem, money finds its way back to us. It's the law of reciprocity. I mean, give and you shall receive. So like that is the simplest thing. And I will tell you, like we just donated $1 million to my daughter's school to build a new building where they're going to facilitate financial education, something near and dear to my heart. So like that's a huge pledge, right? But then all of a sudden, money starts finding its way back into us in different ways that allows us to fulfill on that big pledge that we did. Now, I'm not bragging about the $1 million. Like it could be 100,000, could be $10,000. You could say any dollar amount, but like we wanted to go big because when you do that, you put yourself in this weird predicament where now all of a sudden you're really focused on that. The other thing I will tell you that's really important when it comes to money, and this is a Will Rogers quote. Will Rogers said one of the biggest problems is not what you don't know. He said one of the biggest problems is what people think that they know that just ain't so. So if the problem isn't what we don't know, the problem is really what we think we know. That leads me to believe that the biggest problem throughout the world, and we'll just sum it up with the United States, is conformity. I truly believe that the reason people don't get what they want out of life is they conform to somebody else's failed beliefs, somebody else's failed dreams. And listen, it might be their dream, it might be their belief, but it isn't yours because each of us need to follow our own path, our own, the drum, oh my God, the beat of our own drum, and we need to chase our own dream. That's all I did. I never listened to anybody else. I fought off haters, and I still do today because I've always known my dream is mine and mine, it's unique to me. So I'm going to chase my dream at all costs and I'm never going to quit. That's all I did. And because of that, yes, I've made tens of millions of dollars. I got maybe hundreds of millions of what we've made in all of our companies, but it's just because I created. I didn't conform. Everybody throughout your life is going to get you to try to conform to their narrative, which just so you know is not yours. Create your path and understand that money is the tool to help you do that. That's all it is. And I will tell you, I'll give you this little myth. Money has a severe diminishing return. The more you make, the less important it is. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but it will when you get there. And that's what I can tell you. But the pursuit to money, the pursuit of money is something you should be chasing. You should be chasing the pursuit of your dream. And then in your pursuit of your dream, solve other people's problems along the way. And then that will fuel your dream and make it happen faster. That's what I wish I knew back when I was younger.
I love that. It resonates with me 100%. How do you juggle the 19 companies?
Oh my goodness. It's a lot of work.
Like maybe start in the morning. I love to hear people's morning routines. I have a high performer like you.
Yeah, I'm an incredibly habitual person. So I get up at 5 a.m. I go down, I have black coffee, okay, because I fast in the morning, okay, until noon every day. In the summers and fall, like right now still, I ride my bike to either the lake in our development and swim, or now I'm going to the high school, which is just a little bit further down the street, and I swim. I do my 20 back and forth laps in the school, but I start the day with the hard stuff. And every day on my ride to the pool or the lake, I always pray, and I do a simple prayer, and I just said, thank you for this day. So I give gratitude on my direction. Then on the way back, whether I'm in my car or on my bike, I always listen to Earl Nightingale or Napoleon Hill. You can listen to whatever you want. I listen to them, and I have for years and years and years. So these are just my rituals, my things I do. And I get the hard stuff out of the day. And I even swim in that lake up to when the lake is freezing. Like just a couple weeks ago, I'm in Buffalo. Okay. And we're in October. So you guys can put that together. Just 2 weeks ago, I swam the lake. I froze my butt off. I didn't want to jump in that lake. I knew it was going to be cold. I knew it was going to be painful, but I got in. You get that your whole body seizes up, it feels. And some of you are like, you're crazy. Yeah. But then you start swimming, you warm up. When I got out of that water, I was like euphoric. Okay. And then I began my day, but like I knew nothing in my day was going to be harder than that. So that's how I start every single day. The only thing that screws that up is when I get into my modes of travel like I'm in right now, where I kind of break that habitual thing and it's hard to get back into it, but I always find my way back to that. My days are very structured. Okay, I have executive teams. I have a C-suite of executives that I work with that are just high performers that I've attracted because of a culture that I've built. And all of those people, no one in my organization, especially on the C-suite side, is somebody that needs to be told what to do. They all are self-operators. They're just like me. That is key to
Yeah.
running 19 companies. You got to have people that don't need direction. They just need to be we all need to be heading, the ship needs to be going the same direction. What is the big goal? What are we chasing? And I'm very clear about that, very clear. And everybody then just rows the same place in their different lanes. And then when you have somebody that's out of that, you have to get rid of them. And that's a very hard thing. I've had to do that. I've had to buy out 2 partners in the past year. And I've had to get rid of some people that just because their culture and they got toxic, they get negative, right?
Yeah.
Change is a tough thing. And there's a lot of change in every business. And if you're not changing, you're dying. So we're changing and people just can't change. So you need to give them that off ramp. And that's how I've run 19 companies. And it's not easy. And you gotta give up. You gotta get yourself in your superpower, and you gotta find people, and you gotta say, what is the one thing you love doing every day? And they will tell you, create their title around that one thing. And that's what they do every single day.
Yeah.
Don't make them do things they're not good at.
And personal habits, I got to imagine you're eating well, you're drinking water,
Yes, very
right? The
much.
basics, like we're not drinking alcohol, maybe
This is
no drug.
water, and I drink this all day long. Yep.
Yeah.
Boring. I'm boring. My food, like the food I eat, most of you would be like, oh, that's the most boring thing in the world. That's what I like. It's what I
Yeah.
like. I take supplements every single day. I don't listen to doctors to a roundabout extent. Like I listen to them to a certain extent, but then I find osteopaths that tell me there are other sides to this. And I just get really clear with my body. I do blood work every 3 months to make sure that my body's reading the right things and doing the right things. And if I'm not, I course correct. You gotta, like, this is your temple. This is what's going to get you through every single day. If you don't take care of that, nothing else. How you do one thing is how you do everything. If you can't take care of your own self, how are you going to take care of everything else? Like I make the bed every morning, right? And a lot of people are like, why? It's a waste of time. It's because I've done that since I've been a kid. How you do one thing is how you do everything.
I love that. So many good little blurbs you've given us, some words of wisdom. Before I get to my last 2 questions that I have to ask every guest, since I have you here and we're talking about money, I gotta ask you, where do you think the Fed is headed? How do you feel about gold and silver, and then finally Bitcoin?
Yeah, so let's just start where the Fed is headed. The Fed is headed to a digital dollar. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Fed is a separate entity. They're not federal at all. They're a private institution.
Yep.
Read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you'll understand. So it doesn't matter where the Fed's headed. It's just we all are headed to a digital dollar, which shouldn't come as any surprise because we live a digital world today. Very few of you ever pay cash for anything. You use a credit card, a debit card. We are already living in a digital world. So just know that when we go to a true digital dollar, and just so you know, the Genius Act that was just passed and the Clarity Act soon to follow paves the way for stable coins to be deposited in traditional banks. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but that is one of the problems my companies are solving right now is the pathway for banks to be able to do that. But that's where the Fed is heading, and if I could say, where do I want it to head? Abolish the Fed, get rid of the Fed. That's the high arching thing is the Fed is toxic. The Fed, the person who sits at the head of the Fed is Satan, in my opinion. But that's my opinion of the Fed and where it needs to go. But where it's actually going to go is just to a full digital dollar. Okay?
Yeah. Are you a gold and silver guy, Bitcoin?
I do love gold and silver. And just like Ray Dalio would say, I believe everybody should have between 10 and 15% in gold and silver, physical gold and silver. Do not buy ETFs that hold gold and silver. Just buy the gold and silver. I think both of them are going to go up. I think silver's got more value to it right now than gold does, but gold is the hot topic because it's a storage of wealth. But be careful with gold because gold doesn't pay you an income. So you got to make sure if you're investing in gold, it's for what gold is for. It's a storage of wealth. So I am always a huge fan of precious metals. And I think everybody should have some of them for hell and high water. Like it's going to be everything's going to fall back to. And the last question was, I believe you said Bitcoin, right?
Bitcoin. Give us a Bitcoin blitz. Yeah.
Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. I understand the use case because I've read books on Bitcoin trying to understand that. I still do not invest in Bitcoin. Do I regret? Yeah, of course I do. Do I think Bitcoin's going to keep going north, north, north? No, I think Bitcoin's going to follow the markets. And I think the markets are going one place, and that is south. We're going into that cycle. You're going to see an economic slowdown. You're going to see the whole markets slow down. We may end up in a recession. Who knows? Could be more serious. And when that goes down, Bitcoin will follow. We have seen the correlation between the markets, the stock market, and Bitcoin. So right now it's just overpriced to me. And because there's no intrinsic value, I can't wrap my head around why I would want to invest in it when I feel the price is high. Now, it's all relative. Do I think the price is high, in the grand scheme of where Bitcoin's going? No, I think Bitcoin's going way, 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 way higher. But I think it's going down before it goes back up. And we just saw that last Friday. Now, I think that was an insider job. That's just my opinion. The big fallout you saw in Bitcoin, hands down, someone knew something before Trump went on, and they either got incredibly lucky or they just knew something, because that was a big bet, a big short against it, but to the tune of, I can't remember how many hundred, it was over 150 million, if I'm not mistaken, they made. I think it was actually 180 million they made, like inside deal. But it shows the weakness in Bitcoin in the pricing. Okay, the pricing is very, very volatile, and that's what scares me about it. And that's why I don't invest in it yet.
Last one, real quick. See, because you already kind of answered, the second to last one. Where can people go? Where should they follow you, get in touch, and maybe join the club?
Yeah, I have a huge YouTube channel. So at the Chris Naugle, 1,300 videos there, or you can go to my website, chrisnaugle.com. It's Naugle.
Chris, thanks so much. You are one of the best guests we've had all year. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Oh my gosh, thanks. It was so much fun.
Yeah, see you.
All right, bye.